And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Tsimshian people. Today, a person's attention span is measured in a matter of seconds. We are simply oversaturated materials we do not have time to attend to. To have your story told, to have it written somewhere, is just not enough. We begin today's Open Connection with Volvo Productions principal Farhan Umedaly.
So, I come from the Ismaili people, and we are a kind of Muslim that follows the Shia practice, but we have a living leader today, and he's called Aga Khan. It's actually a hereditary leadership structure that's been passed on since the time of the Prophet. And we're spiritual people. We focus less on dogmatic practices. Our whole ethos and philosophy is to give back. We believe physical life is temporary, but the spiritual life is eternal. That we actually rejoin with the Creator, or we call Allah, but it could be God or the Creator. Allah is just an Arabic word for God. Sometimes there's misconceptions about it. Have you ever heard of the Order of the Assassins?
I've heard that, like in books and stuff like that. Yeah.
So actually, those are the ancestors of the Ismaili people. Well, this is the dark side of it, but now we're basically focused around good things. Basically, my duty as an Ismaili is to lift up others and to be of benefit to society, and that's part of why I love working on teaching filmmaking and creating capacity, because that's what I do. I was actually born in North Vancouver, but my parents were living in Pakistan. My dad worked for the Aga Khan himself to build a university hospital in Karachi, so my first 7 years were there. Then I lived most of my life in the lower mainland in British Columbia. And yeah, that's where... And I lived a couple of years in Lebanon and Egypt in show business, producing music, so that's the only other time I was outside, for a while.
Is that a passion you have always had?
Yeah. Well, actually, I started with violin, classical violin at age 7, and then I taught myself several other instruments. I studied neurobiology in university, but while I was when I would finish studying at the library, I'd be in the studio producing music for local artists, and even an Arabic singer who actually, that's why I moved to Lebanon and Egypt after I finished my research, cardiovascular research at UBC. So I'm like a science nerd that loves music. And then I put it all together in filmmaking.
Culture shock going back home. Was it really that much, or you're going?
Lebanon wasn't actually, I guess in the ancient days it would have been part of the Fatimid Empire as well, so there is some connection there. But the traditional territory of the Ismaili people, there's a stronghold in Central Asia along the Tajik-Afghan border, and I happened to actually go there only just a few years ago and reconnect with my people, and I brought the filmmaking program that I'm doing here in Terrace with Kitsim Kalam and other nations to my own people. So it's like a full 360, but this is really 7 generations away from... So my people moved... they were basically established in Persia, ancient Persia, and then during the time of Crusades, in the time of the Assassins, they basically migrated into these far reaches of the Silk Road on these massive mountains. It's called the Pamir, or Gorno-Badakhshan, they call it. It's actually an autonomous region where the Soviet-Afghan war was actually fought. Mm-hmm. The Taliban are on one side of a river, and a progressive, kind people are on the other. It's just across a small river. It's quite insane.
Well, they have like a clan system or anything like that, or?
Well, we fall under the hereditary leadership of the Aga Khan, basically. So he's our spiritual leader, and then there are, for instance, regional sort of. It's organized as a non-profit organization where we actually contribute funds and our volunteer resources to developing infrastructure like schools, universities, healthcare that's freely available for local populations, not just for our people. So wherever our diaspora is, we try to benefit the local population, and literally that's what we are.
Wow.
I'm trying to connect our Ismaili people with local indigenous communities, because Ismailis have been really good at basically migrating to Canada. My family came as refugees, but now that we're here with the ethos of giving back, and we're uncovering the dark history of colonization. Colonization impacted my people heavily, because we actually were our people settled in India. Then that was under British rule, so all of the same colonial practices were applied there, and then they moved to East Africa. We're basically building railroads. We're merchant class there. And then we had to give up everything. A military dictator was installed in Uganda, and we had to come as refugees to Canada. Now I only have one home. I was born here, but I should be part of a solution, like connecting our people to do something positive here. It's a time of revitalization for all of us, combining efforts.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. The son of refugees to Canada from Uganda, Farhan is committed to building alliances with Indigenous communities through providing professional training and mentorship in filmmaking. Let us return to the conversation as Farhan shares how teaching filmmaking is a powerful tool for those with important stories to tell.
I've seen this journey happen in the different Indigenous communities on Turtle Island that I've visited on teaching filmmaking. The films are about these subjects, and myself being able to go back there and feel just being embraced by the community and learning the traditional practices. I went to different homes and filmed. I'm actually I filmed in these different places, and the people were so kind, and I just felt like I belonged. A really beautiful, amazing feeling. I've seen this story kind of come because of residential schools and people being taken off their land. A lot of this is happening with the younger people now too here, and I actually was a part. I've seen the stories, and now I'm feeling it. It's so amazing. I studied neurobiology in university, and then I basically also worked in music production, but I didn't like show business because it was very exploitative of women where I was anyways, in Lebanon and Egypt. It's basically it's like the Me Too movement, but I saw it when I was very young, and I was like, I can't be party to this. I don't want to be part of that exploitation in any way. And so I actually became a renewable energy developer, and I started to see, so it's totally just doing paperwork and planning wind and solar projects, but then I saw all of these projects and technologies need a nerd to explain it in film format. So I was actually making marketing videos for a long time, and then David Suzuki started mentoring me, introduced me to Reconciliation Canada, and then that whole new a new area of my life came about, basically, which was a connection with our Indigenous people in different territories. I made a film called The Last Stand for Lilu years ago about protecting the Skeena, and now I'm here teaching the program on the Skeena with my dog Skeena, and it's freaking awesome.
How did you come about meeting David? Did he reach out to you, or it was just a circumstance where you met Dr. Suzuki?
Oh, David, of course.
Yeah.
I actually, because I was doing a lot of productions about renewable energy and promoting that as a future for, a solution for humanity rather than fossil fuels, and fighting climate change was all part of that narrative. I started doing productions for the David Suzuki Foundation, and then they gifted my services to Reconciliation Canada to support Reconciliation Canada. They said, here's a filmmaker. We're going to pay for this. Just take him and have him do films for you. And then I learned a lot.
Almost like you were guided to doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you said you were doing videos a little bit. And then when did the genesis of this filmmaking school come about?
Yeah, so as I mentioned to you, I'm in Ismaili, and we are Muslim people. And Muslim people are thrown under the bus all the time as terrorists. If you mention to some people, I said, I can either introduce myself as Ismaili, and they're like, okay, what is that? But if I go for the Muslim thing, they're like, wait a second, but I thought you were a nice guy. This comes up a lot, and it's that's why I'm a nice guy. It's about, there's a lot of bad going on and misled people, I would say, because of political and monetary forces in the world that have painted Islam in this way. And some and some people think they're practicing Islam, but they're absolutely so far gone. I don't know what the hell that is. To me, it's very scary. And my people are really considered infidels because we are spiritual. We're focused on being kind. So I would say Muslims there's a big misconception about Muslims. Majority are very kind people that want to serve humanity. And at the end of the day, I was seeing the Harper government at the time they were always using this word radical Islam, and they're some guy would convert to Islam like overnight, some like a mentally unstable person, and commit, stab some people, blow something, whatever, and it's now reflected on me, and it was horrifying. And they were really trying to scare the public to divide society. So just basically as a political tactic to stay in power. And I saw like a little taste of what it was like to be Indigenous, I felt, because there's now this barbaric cultural practices hotline, report the Muslim next door. I was like, what the hell? I was born here. Where the hell am I going to go? This is getting really uncomfortable. And at the same time, the government was gutting the environmental protections that were protecting, vital ecosystems. Building pipelines through parks was like a thing. So many communities being brutalized, and this has always happened, but it was really amped up during that time. And I thought, like, the Kinder Morgan pipeline was just a ridiculous project, and it was completely against the local Indigenous population's wishes, right? The Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam. And I started to protest and become more politically active. I was like, hell no, I'm taking a stand now. Like, this is, we're in the, there's a lot to say about it, but I just thought, like, I'm comfortable. I've made a lot of productions. I'm okay. I can do more. I need to take a stand. And I started to protest, and I made some connections. And there was this pipeline that was going to be built. Basically, Christy Clark was trying to force it through with the feds for a Malaysian oil and gas giant, Petronas. And the prime minister of that country is now in jail for corruption because of playing around with billions of $36 billion project. The more it costs, the more he would make. So it was like, who are we dealing with?
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. Since time immemorial, Lilo Island, located at the mouth of the Skeena River, has been inhabited by the Tsimshian people. In 2013, Malaysian energy group Petronas made a proposal to build a liquefied natural gas export facility and potentially damaging the Flora Bank's ecosystem. Let us return to the conversation as Farhan shares how he teamed up with another filmmaker to let the world know about the plight of the Tsimshian people.
Well, I better occupy that island and tell us, and at least humanize these people. It's like they had to invite me and Tamo Campos. David Suzuki's grandson was there with me. We made this film together, and our job was to humanize Indigenous people, to show like they matter. They live off this river. Please don't destroy it. It's like, what? Do we have to do this? But we do, sadly. So I thought to myself, I was privileged and honored to be able to be a conduit for that story. I'm not putting my own voice in here. I'm trying to be a vehicle for that, but I should be sharing the knowledge. If in the Smiley tradition, this makes sense. This is my culture. Create capacity, help, lift up others, and that's what Empowered Filmmaker. When it was born, I applied for a Story Hive grant, and I got it. And it was like an overnight thing. Like, within a week, they called an organization I was volunteering for, and that organization turned down like the funds. They were like, "Yeah, we're done for the year," and I'm like, "You're done for the year?" There's people that need that. This is not a luxury. Like, filmmaking is not a luxury in Indigenous communities that we're working with. It's like a tool for cultural revitalization, protecting land, water, immortalizing elders' message for future generations before they're gone. So it's like very important. So first year 25 participants was successful. Next year 75. Next year 100. Then the pandemic, we did an online version. It was 100, and another 100 this year. Here we are doing training 100 Indigenous filmmakers across BC and Alberta. And last week here in Kitsim-Kalem, we made 11 films in 5 days.
That first class you do, it's like, okay, I get this idea, I kind of have an idea,
sure.
How am I going to get these skills to these individuals so they can tell their stories?
Yeah.
How was that first class that you did? You're kind of worried, or?
Honestly, because we've been doing it for 6 years now. So far, I think we hit let me see. So here in Kitsim-Kalem, or just tourists, that was the program we did. We reached 100 films made in the program by first-time Indigenous filmmakers. And I mean first time. Don't know anything about camera settings, haven't filmed before. Just want to make a story. Now at the end of it, you have a 4K color-graded film worthy of distribution on television, and that's what happens. They're going to be on Telus Optic TV, and they can access grants through our program. So they're all set up for the future. We even have our Oscar-style film awards. You've seen?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was so much fun. But like, I have a system of how to build these productions. So it's all the way from file management to storyboarding to camera settings. Whatever camera you have, we'll go through how they work and how to get the right settings, of course, and camera movement, how to import the footage, how to open up 3 sequences in Adobe Premiere, which is the software we're using. So we bring in all the equipment as well. We got 4K camera gimbals, wireless audio kits that are like very easy to use generally, and MacBook Pros loaded with Adobe Premiere. So, just before people arrive, our computers are like, heating up and exporting a project for the show. And we invite the whole community to check it out.
What is your reaction when you see a community start telling their stories their way?
I get emotional thinking about it because I care so much about being for myself. Like it's my life's mission to try to lift up others, and this is how I know to do it. You know what I mean? And so when I see, like, for instance, I try to be everywhere I can to help make sure everyone's films are finished on time. But when you watch that person stand there and present their film, they're stepping into a position of power to change the world, rather than being silenced, which is what the government and colonization had tried to do for so long. So I feel like I'm helping to decolonize and lift up others. It's this feeling of pride that I can't explain to you. It's unbelievable.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Empowerment is a degree of autonomy and self-determination in people and in communities. This enables them to represent their interests in a responsible and self-determined way, acting on their own authority. In this final segment of Open Connection, Farhan shares examples on how Empowered Filmmakers class empowers communities.
The good part is the community owns the project, so we don't actually, they do what they need to. So for instance, we had done some projects in Alberta with Sage Clan in Lethbridge. They are actually taking care of homeless and addicted on the streets of Lethbridge, so building that human connection. A lot of them are Indigenous. They made a production that's actually raising funds for them to keep doing that meaningful work. That's what we want to see. People are using the films to apply for grants, for other things, to assert their rights, to revitalize traditional gardens in Kitsalis Canyon. It's so cool. They're for the people, and we don't dictate the narrative at all.
Have you had people come back a second or a third time?
Yeah, it's often that they'll come for a refresher, and one of my participants named Michelle, she actually did it twice and then applied for a Story Hive grant. So she got a $20,000 grant for the Indigenous edition, and 3 other participants did the same. So we have 4 $20,000 grants out to past participants this last year.
These individuals are telling their stories, not your story
No,
or whatever
not at
it would be. Yeah.
Yeah, all we want to do is teach the technical skills and how to actually tell their story. That's what the mission is.
And we know this does make a difference because the one you did with Lulu Island, you actually went to Malaysia, right? And,
yes.
And talked to them and say, hey, this is where it's all about. What was their reaction?
Yeah, so I applied to numerous film festivals to try to create a movement around supporting the Shimshan people of Lac Balams and the local communities up the Skeena to protect that area. So I applied to numerous festivals. We got into the Kuala Lumpur Eco Film Festival in 2016, and I was like, wow, is this a setup? Because if I fly over there, I'm basically saying their state-owned oil and gas company is a human rights offender and just committing genocide in Canada in partnership with the local Christy Clark. Sorry. And they actually I thought to myself, this is a risk, but I went over there and I realized these are really good people. The Kuala Lumpur Eco Film Festival, and they organized meetings with several government officials. They brought like high-level officials, like Minister of Natural Resources of Malaysia, sitting there in tears watching the film because they've been lied to about the opportunities here. The government would say to them, everything's being done, we're pushing this through, and we've popped open, like Christy Clark said, we've popped open bottles of champagne with Petronas before even speaking with the people whose land she's on or trying to build this project, you know? Because we're all human at the end of the day, you know? And as they're Muslims, as Malaysians are. I asked them, how can you support Palestinian rights but you're committing the same atrocities here for oil and gas? It doesn't make any sense. And it was really, I think they were really impacted by that.
This empowered filmmaker, where do you see this going in the future?
Oh, well, I mean, my personal goal is to create an army of Indigenous filmmakers that can tell the stories they need to. Complete self-sufficiency in digital storytelling, which works in harmony with an oral tradition. Because, you know, it's just immortalizing oral tradition. And I just want to train as many as I can before I'm gone. I love making films, but even the films I'm making with different Indigenous nations that I have gained the trust of, it always incorporates training. I feel like many filmmakers come in, they try to up the drama, and they exploit people just so they can get a film credit or a film award. And they're using Indigenous traditions and culture and bastardizing it. I want to do the opposite of that.
You want people to tell their own stories, and then they can start gathering their knowledge and keeping their own archives.
Yeah, whatever they want to do. Like, we don't discriminate at all. It's funded by StoryHive, so, you know, as long as we call it positive storytelling. Some storytelling to lift up the community, fight for something better.
And how do we find out about your empowered filmmaking class?
Yes, you can go to empoweredfilmmaker.com. We have Instagram, Empowered Filmmaker, or Vovo Productions on Instagram as well. You can also check out StoryHive, because so Vovo Productions, my company, partners with StoryHive to make this film program possible. So it's been a really great relationship with StoryHive. And I have to say, TELUS as an organization, like with StoryHive as a part of TELUS, good people. Like, you think of, you know, corporations and then having their own agenda, and just like, they're solid, kind people that care about like local communities, and especially they really support what we do.
And is there anything I might have missed that you'd like to add?
I think it's so interesting that how we've been embraced by local communities that we serve. Like, even in there's always doubts, like, who's this Middle Eastern looking dude? Like, why does he care? Like, what's he in for? But this is my culture. I'm practicing my culture by doing this. And once people know, they can see how much I care. When we finished our class at the end of the program, I'm like shooting for participants until the sun goes down, doing whatever it takes. We got to climb a mountain to take the drone shot to show that beauty of their territory. I'm doing it. I don't care. We go hard, and this is a battle. It's a battle to the finish line. I'm not going to give up, and they don't either.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance to the existence of man is not from here to there, but that connects from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.